Hello and welcome to BharatShakti.in. I'm Nitin Gokhale. In its 90th year, the Indian Air Force has faced over the past 3 years, starting 2019, numerous challenges, starting with the Balakot airstrike to COVID mitigation, and then, of course, the standoff in Eastern Ladakh. To talk about all that and the experiences gathered by the Air Force during this period, I am joined in this special broadcast by Air Chief Marshal VR Chaudhari, the Chief of Indian Air Force, who is giving perhaps his first video interview after taking over in September 2021. And we are thankful to him for this. Chief Marshal Chaudhari, welcome to this program and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So like I said at the beginning, these 3 years from Balakot to Ladakh have been very challenging, it seems. So when you look back, what were the main obstacles or challenges that you faced?
I would like to summarize it by saying that these 3 years definitely have been, in the last 3 years post Balakot, have been difficult times for the Air Force, more challenging times. I would like to categorize them under 3 or 4 heads.
Mm-hmm.
Number one was, of course, the standoff in Eastern Ladakh, which saw us deploying to heights and areas where the Air Force has never been before.
And a prolonged deployment.
Prolonged deployment. We had to extend that deployment of our manpower, who is not used to being deployed at those altitudes for so long period of time, with little scope for turnover because of the qualifications and the technical expertise required of the manpower. I did not have much of a scope to keep rotating the manpower. So prolonged deployment of manpower was one issue. Taking our equipment to those heights for where it is not supposed to operate and continuously operating it for over 2.5 years has been a huge challenge for us from maintenance point of view and even from the operational sustaining their performance at those altitudes. Apart from this, we are aware that the Black Swan event of COVID hit us at the same time.
Exactly.
Particularly when it came to helping the nation in its efforts towards containing COVID, distribution of vaccines, collection of oxygen, and so on. Our transport aircraft, particularly the C-17s and C-130s, I think had clocked more than 5,000 sorties during that critical period. And at the same time, we were employing them for deploying the army in the Ladakh region.
Exactly. So, and also you took them out also abroad. A lot of vaccines were taken.
We distributed vaccine, I think, to over 90 countries.
There you are.
And we got back oxygen tankers and equipment from 18 countries.
It's a huge operation.
So it was a huge operation and it coincided with the time when we were deployed and redeploying in Ladakh.
Exactly. So that, I think, has summed up very well. But one of the key outcomes that one has seen over the past 2.5 years, almost 2 years now, since May 2020, is also a great synergy between the Air Force and the Army in terms of transportation, in terms of movement, mobilization, logistics. So is this something that is a learning experience?
Definitely. Not that there was something very much new that has happened in the last 3 years. The synergy always existed. The structures to formalize the synergy probably have not been in place. But here I would hasten to add that it is not just 2 services, even the Navy has to be included. To give an example, the ISR, the Intelligence Surveillance Recce effort, in the entire period of the standoff from the last 2 years, has been a tri-services effort. We have been sharing the resources from the Navy, the PATIs, the RPAs from the Army and Navy, and all the information is being channelized to where it is required.
At one place, where it's required.
So that is a huge learning experience for us. Apart from that, common platforms. We have been taking spares and components, critical components from common fleets from the Navy to keep our fighters and helicopters going up north.
Right.
So it's a tri-services synergy which has really, has shown us a lot of potential as to how we can operate in future.
That's the next question that I had, that theaterization has been spoken about and how 3 services must come together, reduce redundancies or reduce duplication. In those terms, at least logistics-wise, do you see the first effort can actually go into logistics? You're sharing logistics, sharing bases, sharing experiences. Is that something that you're looking at?
Definitely. There is a lot of scope in sharing of equipment. However, it has to be a long-term effort when it comes to planning of procurement. Future procurement should be now have a lot of commonality for all the three services, so that our stocking and our demand and our replenishment policies are more or less congruent with the other two services.
Correct.
So, but there is a lot of, we are taking small steps right now, lessons learned from this standoff. But I'm sure with new structures in place, this will be formalized.
Yeah, I'll come to theaterization per se a little later. But going back to the whole effort in Ladakh and also the experience of dealing with three different crises, COVID, Ladakh, and deploying them in at high altitude. Was the Air Force stretched? Do you think it's got sort of now lessons there to fill some gaps? You need more personnel, more bases? Or what is it?
I would say yes, the Air Force was stretched, but that is what we are trained for. And every crisis brings out the best in human beings, very applicable to all the personnel in the Air Force. So I think what I witnessed was the grit and determination of every air warrior to overcome these multiple challenges that they were simultaneously faced with.
Right.
And I think we have come out much stronger from the lessons that we have learned. We have also mapped our voids in terms of equipment, in terms of training and so on. And we are going to make concerted efforts now to fill those gaps.
And will those gaps also be in the timelines for procurement, the kind of procurement that you want to do? Did the emergency purchases also help in filling some of those gaps?
Yes, they did. The emergency powers that were given for procurement definitely filled a lot of voids, particularly in some weapons and a lot in some software. So it helped us a lot to overcome these gaps that we perceived that were existing.
I see. But having taken those good lessons from emergency procurement, especially in say RPAs and UAVs and like you said ISR, for three services to synergize their future requirements, what is the kind of roadmap you're looking at? I mean, forget theaterization, forget the jointness that will come whenever it comes. But right now, you all work in silos. So, what do you propose as you go forward? And I suppose you will be the Chairman, Chiefs of Staff to in some days, I guess, or you may be already nominated. But what would be your ideas to synergize that?
We already have in place systems which are controlled or more or less, I would not say controlled, they are coordinated by the CISC and under him the DCIDS, PP and FD.
Right.
So who coordinates the requirements of all the three services. The roadmap for all the three services have already been made out and we have a fairly clear vision as to what the three services need to procure and how much can we procure in the allotted budget. So I think the steps are being taken by the headquarter IDS in that.
Okay. And they might just get more role in trying to get synergy together.
Yes. Yeah.
But moving away from that, you also mentioned in passing about the challenge to maintain equipment at high altitudes and which were never tested perhaps in such large quantities. So now, has the philosophy also undergone a little bit of a change as far as the Air Force is concerned, or you're still flexible in terms of moving assets from one theatre to the other?
We will never have adequate assets to fulfill the requirements of one theatre.
Okay.
So depending on the situation, the need will always be there to shift assets. It may be temporary, may be permanent.
Right.
So this is a lesson that we have learned from prolonged deployment in Eastern Ladakh, that even equipment has got its limitations as to how long can we stretch it.
Right.
Sometime we have to bring it back for servicing, for maintenance and overall and such like. In the meanwhile, we can't leave a gap there. So we have to pull out from some other theatre or some other command and to fill that gap.
Right.
So this is a continuous process, an ongoing process. We have also forward shifted our base repair depot elements, for example, to Leh.
Okay.
So that some part of the radar maintenance can be done there itself. You don't have to bring the radar back to the planes.
To the planes, yeah. Okay. So that's a improvement, I would say, or an additional step that you've taken. But again, since India is such a vast country, you have different terrain, different climatic conditions. Even Arunachal Pradesh, the northern frontier there, or in Sikkim would require more infrastructure, I guess. So on the infrastructure front, give us some idea about how the Air Force is progressing. What is it that it needs to do in the coming couple of years?
You are well aware that the project for CCNEP, the Northeast project, was sanctioned back in 2010 or somewhere thereabouts.
Right.
And over the years, we have now taken over all the ALGs which have been now developed. In fact, one or two of the ALGs, for example, Pasighat is now taking even fighter class aircraft. They're now dual-use airfields.
Yes.
So adequate with good foresight and vision of our predecessors, this infrastructure has come up to a large extent in the Northeast.
Mm-hmm.
In the Eastern Ladakh and the J&K region also, we have identified voids and we have identified areas which need to be built up over the few years, and we have moved the case with the ministry to prioritize this kind of infrastructure development now.
Okay. You've also helped the BRO in the Border Roads Organization in hastening the infrastructure projects on ground.
Yes.
And also they are helping you to do infrastructure in Eastern Ladakh, I guess.
We are doing some of the projects have been handled by the BRO.
Mm-hmm.
So
some of your
some of the
runways.
op works, some of the smaller op works, some runway maintenance, etc. is being handled by the BRO.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the best practices here, can they become a sort of basis for future theaterization? Since tri-service synergy is one of the best outcomes from this crisis, would you think that this can be then replicated as a template going forward?
It can be, but this is not the only way we should look at the integration model in future. Right. Because my firm belief is that we need to look at the domains of warfare that we are going to be faced with in future. So it's going to be from the physical to the non-physical, kinetic, non-kinetic,
right.
From small drones to hypersonic weapons.
Yes.
So to be able to have a robust mechanism or warfighting mechanism to be able to cater for all these domains, we need to think differently. We need to have really new kind of structures.
Mm-hmm. Which are India specific.
Which are India specific and which are future ready.
Right. So in that context, are there discussions on with the other two services?
Yes, we have also projected our viewpoint very recently to both the other two services to say that this is what we should, we are, for example, in the Air Force, our focus is on network-centric operations. And we firmly believe that that is the way forward.
That said, there is a lot of discussion internationally and otherwise about the way the Ukraine war, Russia's offensive against Ukraine is progressing. And we all thought that the days of prolonged wars are over. But it seems it's now more than nearly 2 months now that the war is on there. So in that context, how do you reconcile the two contradictory requirements? Short, swift wars. You spoke about logistics in one of your seminars recently.
That's right.
And the requirement for quick logistics and quick operational turnarounds. But that is one of the future requirements. But there's also the old conventional wars that go on. How do you reconcile the contradictions?
Actually, it'd be quite naive to think that we can, use the template of what is happening globally in our region. Yeah. There have been in the past, people have been comparing the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict and how drones are going to be the future of conflict. Now the Russian and Ukrainian war is giving rise to a new concept of prolonged wars. Yeah. However, I would still say that in our context, in our geography here, with our neighbors, the battle space is going to be cluttered, congested, contested, complex.
All four C's.
So it's a different battle space here. Mm-hmm. So we cannot use the template of what is happening in Ukraine or what has happened in other countries in our environment.
That's very well put. So in that context, for years together, we were obsessed in our national polity and our national security doctrines, perhaps, with Pakistan, the Western adversary. But now China, the northern adversary, is the main focus. So while you can deal with Pakistan, you've dealt with Pakistan, if they come together in a hypothetical scenario of a two-front war, how is the Air Force looking at that challenge?
We are fully aware that collusivity between the two nations is a distinct possibility. Mm-hmm. we can counter them not purely by hardware, but also with better tactics, better training, and thinking a little differently.
Right.
In that, I will again go back to the term I mentioned, that we are focusing now on network-centric operations. This is basically amalgamation of all the assets available in the nation, fusing the data together.
Right.
Okay, and using this fused data to our benefit to be able to counter the enemy at the right time at the right place.
Right. So, in that context, fighter jets are, of course, the key to everything that you do, apart from your transport fleet, of course. And we know, all of us know, where the strength is depleting the way it is depleting. What are the plans that you have in the immediate future to overcome that shortage?
The fighter strength, first of all, is going to get augmented with the LCA MK I, for which the contract was signed 2 years ago.
Right.
And we are hoping for deliveries sometime next year. In the long run, for the indigenous platforms, we have placed our full confidence and faith in the AMCA project, and in the interim, the LCA MK II.
Okay.
So these are the indigenous products.
Platforms. Yeah.
Apart from that, we are also continuing with our process for the MRFA. This is in a different category of aircraft, and the RFI was issued. We got responses from 8 OEMs.
Okay.
All the RFI responses were analyzed, and now in a short while we should be moving the case.
So would it be something in the context of Atmanirbharta, the stress on that?
Yes.
How would that progress?
Yes, it will be something like you are aware of the model for the C295. So it is buy global, make in India. So we think that that's a
good model.
It's a good model for us.
So I think the OEMs now must be aware of that this requirement is very much on the table.
We made it very clear to them that this is a requirement that they have to make it in India.
Right. So that is one. One final question about your recruitments and your manpower, technical manpower, skilled manpower. Do you face any shortages there or any challenges there in terms of both officers and men and women?
As of now, no. We have been having a good response to all our recruitment campaigns.
Right.
From the officers' side, we have marginal shortage in 1 or 2 branches. Most of the other branches are, as per our establishment, fully subscribed to. For the airmen also, we have a nominal shortage. The shortage is not something that is insurmountable. We found ways and means of doing with that shortage right now.
Right.
But I'm sure in the times to come, we will fill up those gaps also.
So, Air Chief Marshal Chaudhari, thank you very much for your time. And this is the 90th year for the Air Force. I'm sure there are grand celebrations in the offing. It can only grow further as I can see it. And therefore, I think the viewers will understand what the Air Force is all about from what you have said to us. We wish you all the best and your men and women in service. Hope to have more conversations with you going forward.
Thank you, Nitin.
Pleasure.